I wanted to first welcome everybody who is here. And I am going to see 3 people are in the waiting room that I need to let in, I guess. And the speakers that we're going to have today are Patrick Cummings, who is from NYSAC. That stands for the New York State Association of Counties. Ori Einhacker, who is the person who worked very hard as Montgomery County changed from a board of supervisors to a legislative model, and she'll describe the model that they had. And then there's Ann Brandon, who I believe worked on 2 different charter changes in Albany County. So I am going to change to the speaker's view for the recording, hopefully.
Barb, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, I'm on my phone. I'm sorry, folks. I hate technology. I can try to do it. Okay, thank you, Barb, for doing the introductions. We're going to start with a short PowerPoint that we've done on Saratoga County government, just to bring people up to date with whatever they might need to know. So Barb, if you could start the PowerPoint. Well, I'll just get started. You know, Saratoga County is a county, one of the 65 or so counties in New York State. And we had an estimated county population in 2018 of 230,000 people. We are the fastest growing county in the Northeastern United States and the fastest growing county in upstate New York. Barb, do you have a slide? Saratoga County has 19 towns, 2 cities, Mechanicville and Saratoga Springs, 8 villages, and 13 school districts. The county seat is in Ballstown Spa. Ah, there we are.
Are we recording this?
Yes.
Thank you.
We'd like to edit the first piece out of it, though. I don't know what's happening, folks. We've usually. It's fine. We're getting there. Ah, all right. Next slide. I'm going to go on. Saratoga County is governed under the traditional form of county governance in New York State. That means unless steps are taken to change it, it's done by a county board of supervisors. It might be time for the board of supervisors to examine the reasoning that led to chaired in, there was a commission in 1987, a task force report chaired by Fred Heckenberg, who was part of the county 21st Century Commission, Study Commission. The commission was appointed by Roy McDonald, then chair of the Board of Supervisors. They said that it might be time for the county to re-examine the creation of the county administrator in 1979, which was about 8 years previously. And also they recommended changing to a county board of representatives instead of a county board of supervisors. They recommended that change be made in 1999, and that the Board of Supervisors restudy the entire issue within several years, but that has not happened. All right, the Board of Supervisors is the legislative body for the county and has the executive function for the county in law. It's made up of supervisors from each municipality and town. The Board of Supervisors acts in executive and legislative positions. They may authorize the chairperson of the board to act, but they have to do that in an open meeting. Next slide. Town supervisors are elected by voters in their town. They chair their town board and they represent their town on the Board of Supervisors. Next slide. Most supervisors wear what we call two hats. They have joint responsibility for running their towns and serving on the county board. And they spend considerably more time on their towns than on the county, although sometimes that is reversed. One hat supervisors have no town or city duties. They are elected only to the county Board of Supervisors. That's why we say they have one hat. Currently, Saratoga Springs the city of Saratoga has two supervisors, one from the city of Mechanicville and a second supervisor from Clifton Park who has only county duties. Upcoming census might authorize additional second supervisors due to population. Towns that fall into this would be Halfmoon and Milton. Why is additional people valuable? It's because the supervisors sit on committees where much of the work in the county is done. And when a municipality has two supervisors, they have another person to sit on committees. The chair of the Board of Supervisors serves a one-year term and appoints the county administrator, the department heads, and the chairs and members of all board committees. There was always an informal agreement within the county that the chair of the Law and Finance Committee moves up the next year to be the chair of the Board of Supervisors. Although legally, the chair of the Board of Supervisors is elected by a majority of the board. This year, that didn't exactly happen. Supervisors have a weighted vote system. The Supreme Court required local and state governments to be equalized by population in 1965, known as one person, one vote. So that the voting power is equal to the population of town represented. For instance, the town of Day has 920 votes, and the town of Clifton Park, each supervisor has 36,000 votes. The largest municipality, almost half of the population, would need one more town to join them in order to have a majority of the votes in the Board of Supervisors. That would be Clifton Park, Halfmoon, Saratoga Springs, Milton, and one other town would have the majority of votes. The quorum of the Board of Supervisors used to require a majority of the weighted vote and a majority of municipalities. That would be 12 in order to constitute a quorum. This year it was changed so that it now is just the majority of the weighted votes. This is a list of the Saratoga County supervisors, and you can see what the weighted votes are, if you can get close enough to the screen to see it. if anybody that was following what's gone on this year could see that some changes have happened in the county government. Because the county administrator serves at the pleasure of the Board of Supervisors, we've had a change in county administrator and a change in quorum. And it's been an interesting time to look at Saratoga County government. As I said, county government is under state law and it's very, very complex. So we've invited Patrick Cummings to join us today to talk about what's involved with county government and state law. So I'd like to turn this over now to Mr. Cummings. And my apologies for technology.
No worries. I'll probably be apologizing myself with dogs barking. It's a Zoom world now, but things are looking better. So hopefully we'll get to do these kind of meetings in person soon enough.
I just wanted to say, if anybody has questions, would you put them in the chat function and we'll get to them? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patrick.
Anytime. Thanks, Francie, and thanks to the entire league. Thanks to Saratoga County. My name is Patrick Cummings. I'm counsel with the New York State Association of Counties. I've been in this capacity for about 10 years. And who are we? So NYSAC, we're a not-for-profit organization that proudly serves all 57 counties across New York State and New York City. And what does that mean? What we really do is, in large part, we're going to talk about today with why we've got different county structures throughout the state. And that's we try to help counties provide the most effective and efficient government for their residents. We do that by advocating on their behalf to both the state and federal government. We try to help them secure funding to provide services. We try to help them change state law so they have more flexibility on how they can perform those services most efficiently. We also educate. So we educate our members and we provide guidance and support for our members, whether new state law is being passed to even for newly electeds, especially we give presentations like this of what are different county structures, what can and can't you do. So we try to provide that through education. We also really try to be a bridge for our county members to meet with each other. It's one of the best forms of support is seeing from one county to another. Well, how did you overcome this hurdle? How did you provide this service? And to get them together, get them talking, really helps out. So that's who we are in a nutshell. And we'll get into the presentation. We represent, as I said, county government. And that's what we're here to talk about today. New York State has three main local government forms, though, right? You've got counties, you've got cities, you've got towns. That's similar to many, a lot of states. But unlike a lot of states, county government does quite a bit in the state of New York, and that's in large part how our history was formed. But we do many of the services that are state constitutional requirements or even federal constitution of the state. We being county organizations provide those services for our residents. That's everything from your sheriff's department, your district attorney's department, your public defenders, your Department of Social Services, your county health officials. You'll see the state has all these organizations as well, but we do them for them on the local level. Your county clerk, your county DMV, your counties are very involved in your residents' day-to-day life and providing those services.
Patrick, excuse me, but Did you want me to be showing the PowerPoint while you're saying this, or do you want?
Yeah, we could start that and we'll go from there. And I think this is a small enough group too. If anybody has, I know, we mentioned that, you know, we'll just put anything in the chat, but if anybody's got a question, if you want to unmute and just yell, you know, if I'm being unclear on something, you got something right away, just feel free to shout it out or put it in the chat box. I'll try to hit it right then and there. But so yeah, we'll follow this PowerPoint. It's a larger PowerPoint. I don't want to take up too much time. The first 16 slides are just kind of history and some background of counties. We'll move through those and then we'll get right into the county organizational structure. And I've also sent to Barb, I think she's going to either put it in the chat or send it out to people. NYSAC has I think it's an over 40-page write-up on county government organization and which counties do what throughout the state, so that you can get in much more detail and probably answer any questions you might have just from that document alone. We're not going to go through everything that's in there, but we'll go through the basics here. But yeah, if you want to start up that PowerPoint, that'd be great.
Okay, there I've got, well, this is the very beginning.
Yeah, we'll go to we'll pass my picture. We'll go to slide 3 or so where if you could.
Tell me if this is right. Do you want to go further?
I don't see it.
Oh,
Not up yet, Barb. I'm glad you're having trouble because I wouldn't want to be the only one having trouble today. Now that I'm on my 3rd device.
well, I am gonna have to go back because I think what I didn't do is
You know,
share my screen. Sorry.
and I can, if need be, I can just talk through it and we can have it for reference.
She'll catch up. Go ahead. She'll
I
catch up
hope.
soon.
All right. So to start, you need to know that you know the counties were around in this, I think it was the mid to late 1600s, even before the state of New York was formed, certainly before the United States was even formed. And we were in New York created, and I think it was 12. It's on the PowerPoint, but there were 12 counties set up by the English monarchy, and you from there you already see the structure, and you'll see a lot of the similar names. I mean, that's why you get kings, queens. Dutchess County was I believe at that time, and it's already a recognition to get a structured government. From there, already the king set up a sheriff in each of these counties. That's why we've got county sheriffs today. You know, it's held true to form. You had already some elected representatives at that time. You know, certainly not for the services we do now, but for some representation and for taxation purposes. That was already a structure going forward. For all the way back then. You flash forward to, you know, our independence, and the United States becomes a sovereign nation, and New York and gets their powers. They set up a state constitution. So now we've got a federal constitution that's going to delegate what the states have to do and further requirements for them. And the state of New York sets up their own constitution. And they also create the counties of New York and the local government structure that we see today. So counties first get their power from England. Now they get a power and a structure from the state of New York. It's also
Interrupt and see if
Yeah.
people are seeing the slides in the PowerPoint.
No,
Damn.
what? Shucks. You mean shucks?
I do mean shucks.
no worries.
See if I can get to the very end.
Keep trying, Barb.
But
Well,
We can just keep going because.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
so what I want you to understand here is that you know counties are a creation of the state, and because of that, we have many They create us for multiple reasons, and one is to be a service provider, and we do that, and we as we mentioned, all the various services that we do. We also but we have some protect, and so the state tells us quite a bit what we have to do. One place that we have tremendous flexibility, what we call home rule authority, is how we organize and we structure our government. So we have to give out. Oh, great. Yeah, we can just stay. You can just stay right here, because the other stuff is before 16 is some background that you might want to know. But go to slide 17 if you could, or back up a couple. Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I'm just going to move my picture over so I can see this. There we go. So the one place that I mean, we do have quite a bit of power, right? But a lot of that power is granted through the state constitution or by the state. So I mean, we provide services, but we're also, unlike a fire district, right? They also provide services and are an entity, a government entity, but we also have taxing authority. We also have the ability to pass local laws, but and there's quite a bit of flexibility in those local laws on how we govern our locality. We can even pass criminal laws up to a misdemeanor if need be. So there's flexibility and powers that a county has, but the biggest place that we have, in my opinion, the most flexibility we have to do unilateral choices on this is what our county is going to do without state interference, is how we organize ourselves, what kind of structure we create to then provide those services. And there are every county is going to be a little bit different, and in part it can get a little confusing because of that, of you go from one county to the next and they do things a little bit differently, or they have a little bit different of a structure, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It can kind of make more sense when you understand that how different we are from county to county, whether that be population size, demographics, certain needs in certain regions, and the counties can either adjust or if it's or stay as they are based on what's working best for that county, right? So there's three basic form structures that counties make up throughout New York State. And within those three structures, there's tweaks and differences between the three, but just know there's three. There are counties that operate under direct administration of the local legislature and or board of supervisors. And as mentioned before, that's the original sort of form of government structure. And that consists in large part of your board of supervisors. So the way that New York State was set up originally was, if you are elected as a town supervisor within your town, you do have, as mentioned before, that two-hat role of you're also going to be a representative on your county legislature. So you get elected at your town or city as a representative, and then you go onto the board. The legislature for the county in these forms of government of the ones that have direct administration. So we'll talk about the other two forms, not a non-manager. So this is actually not Saratoga County what I'm talking about. I'm talking about with just complete oversight of the day-to-day operations by the board of supervisors or the county legislature. Those tend to be, and it's not always, but those tend to be smaller counties where your county legislature when you've got, you've got numerous county employees in different departments, and they are overseeing and making sure that those services are being done appropriately. They're making the hiring decisions. Ultimately, it's on them for hire, fire. They can delegate some of those authorities, but we'll get into that. That's the first group. So it's a county legislature, county board, and they are direct oversight to the day-to-day operations of the county. The second is a county, again, a county board and or county legislature, but they've got an appointed manager or administrator that helps oversee the day-to-day operations. And I think in further slides we'll talk about that. That's your Saratoga County, and then your third is your counties with an elected administration. So you've got, these are your county executive counties. And so now you're actually forming an elected executive branch of government. And I'll go a little bit further into the what and why and how many are there. But that's usually done through a county charter, and I'll talk about also when we do that. So let's go into the difference between. You can stay at that slide. Well, stay here. So we've got now 57 counties, as we mentioned, right? 23 of them have adopted a county charter. We'll talk about that in a second, what a county charter is and why. 16 counties currently have a board of supervisor structure, like Saratoga. 40 counties have a county legislature. So now you're talking about not wearing the two hats. You're talking about a separately elected county structure, a county legislature that's going to be elected through their own districts, separate from your town board. And then you've got one county that's got a board of representatives. That is, it's very similar to in that 40-page write-up we talk about it. But that's at Otsego County. It is similar to the county legislature setup, but it's got some tweaks. But we won't focus on that one as much right today. Next slide. So, supervisor, a supervisor versus a legislator or representative. What's the difference? Next slide, please. So, as we talked about before, the town supervisor gets elected, and they've got their town duties, and town duties are spelled out under New York State town law, and then they also have another function, and that is they become automatically upon election. They are in Board of Supervisor counties. They become part of the Board of Supervisors, which has very similar powers, almost identical to your county legislature. Those powers and duties are spelled out in what's known as county law. That's New York State county law. The state set that up on what exactly a supervisor, when in the capacity of when they're working in they're wearing that hat, the county official hat, what they do. But ultimately, you can go to the next slide, please. They get elected, and they have the power of local law. Let's say they're county hat now. When they're on the county board, they can create local laws. They are setting the budget. They have the power of the day-to-day operations and the hire, fire abilities over each department, and that can be a lot, right? Because again, you're talking about how many employees and the structure, and that's why. But you tend to see the smaller counties, they can handle this, and they can do this without necessarily an administrator, because it's a smaller unit of government, and they are all potentially even within the same building, and they can handle that oversight. When a county starts to become a bit larger, you do see quite a bit that they will have a county manager, county administrator will be hired by the board or the county legislature. This is a non-county exec. Yes. Oh, sorry. That form, when you've got a county manager or county administrator, and I think I've got a slide later that talks about this, but that's really it's someone similar powers and duties. I mean, that's just, again, it's whether it's an admin or manager, they're kind of got the same responsibilities, and with that is the oversight in the day-to-day. They're going to be answering both. This is a power that gets delegated by the Board of Supervisors or the county legislature. It's not a power that is given forever. This is not a power that's lost by the Board of Supervisors when they hire a county administrator. They are giving over that day-to-day operation, potentially the hire fire ability. But with that, the administrator or county manager needs to answer to the Board of Supervisors, update them, let them know directions they're going in. When help set up the budget, they're presenting that to the Board of Supervisors or the legislature. These are all functions that they will do on behalf of them, and then they're also working. It's a difficult job. They're working day to day with all the department heads and the county employees to find out what's going on and to make sure everyone's doing the best job possible. This is because of when you get when you're automatically on the county board. Here, this has to be done when you're talking about passing, whether it be resolutions, budget, local laws. It has to be done by weighted vote. And so, what's weighted vote? You're as mentioned before, there was a Supreme Court case that we're saying that your representatives need to it needs to be one person, one vote. Well, how can you do that in a Board of Supervisors situation when you've got one town that has 800 people and the next town, and if your whole board's 15 people, one town 700 people, one town is 2,000. You do it by weighted voting, and that's because you are stuck within your town border, and that's the only way to achieve that, to make sure that happens. Next slide. So now there's some counties have gone to a county legislator format, and this can be done a couple different ways. You can do it. There's two mechanisms that you can get to a county legislature. One is done by a charter, through a charter. But there's also an ability to do this outside a charter, but ultimately it's going to be needed done by a referendum one way or another. Because New York State is not like California, where you can put up proposition X, Y, and Z to the people and get the choices up and just vote by the people. We have our representatives that we elect, and then the powers and duties that they keep are protected by the state constitution. And if there's ever going to be a power or duty that is not just delegated, intentionally given over by them, if it's taken from them, it needs to be done by a referendum in some manner. And that we'll get into county charters and how that's done. But if you're going to set up a county legislature, you're changing from that two-hat system of getting on the town board and then automatically to the county legislature, to now you're going to set up districts and have separate elections and two separate elected officials, one The town supervisor would be the town supervisor and just control that town government, represent that town government. In a county legislature format, you're now setting up districts, and you are electing those individuals to represent the district for you just on the county level. This is, typically then these districts are originally going to be divided up. I've never seen this any other way originally. I don't think, well, no, that's not true. You can do this one of a few ways. You set up the district though to make it one person, one vote as best you can. All right. So you would cut up those, let's say again, 15 county legislators. You would make those districts form in such a way that you would have potentially equal voting in each district, right? The issue with that is that would fulfill one person, one vote. If you made those approximately equal, then each legislator would get one vote, right? And whether on anything from, again, the budget to any kind of local law. The issue comes up every 10 years. Is that by I think state law and by constitutional law, you need to, if the population base, which it does quite often, goes up or down 5%, to comply with one person, one vote, the county legislature would need to do one of two things. They would need to either redraw that district line to then make sure that, again, those districts stay within a certain the proper number of one person, one vote, or that district itself is now going to turn into a hybrid of we're going to make weighted voted within those districts. You see this in Schenectady County right now. I think they've got 15 county legislators. I think it was in the 70s that was their charter set up a county legislature. And they've got different districts. But then as their population base grew, instead of changing the district lines, they would do a weighted vote. So now that individual that a decade before that representative that would have one vote, they might have 1.5 votes or one, and the district next to them might have only 0.7 vote. And that's how that would work going forward in that kind of function. Again, with this, they've got very similar powers to how a board would, a board of supervisors, within the county. They would have, they can, until they delegate to a manager, they'd have oversight to day-to-day operations. They would set the budget. They're the ones passing the local laws, but just on a county level. So real quick, the difference now you're talking before we even get into county executives. You got a county legislature is going to be a separate body completely, separate individuals. This is going to obviously increase some costs, especially in the short end, right? You're going to have two different representatives, one on a county level, that's just salary alone we're talking about. They're going to get paid for that representation, and then the town supervisor, all right, representing the town. And then but there's with that separation, I think some that go that direction can see there's clearer lines potentially, right, of what this is my function, and there's good and bads there too, right? And that's all why it's important to know your community and know what you need. We do a lot with shared services. But counties have always done a lot with shared services. I think it got highlighted more with the state's initiative, but you can see when you've got a board of supervisors. When I was working with counties, you could see it kind of clearly, this happening of a lot of the shared services in a board of supervisor structure. These were things that they didn't even necessarily contract with, because they were like, I'm the county and the town, and meaning like, look at it was already a shared service. It didn't need to come down to a forced agreement or some kind of negotiation. I mean, something as simple as snow plowing, right? If a county owns a bridge and but the town is going over, is that town going to just lift the shovel and then, because it's a county road, and drive over the bridge, or are they just going to plow that right over? And you know, you could say, well, of course they would. Why wouldn't they just keep the shovel down? When you have two forms of government, there's liability with that, right? There's insurance, there's concerns, and these things need to get worked out. But it's sometimes having two forms of government is you know, with two representatives is a good thing. You're representing your residents on that. On others, it can be easier to negotiate and understand that we're all working for the same representative in both our town and county function, and what's going to work out best for them both. So next slide.
Yes.
So elected executives, we've got 12 county executives, right? You know Montgomery County's got an elected county executive, Albany County from close to the elected executive. So what's the difference here, and how's this done? These are all done through with a charter power. We're creating a newly elected face of the county, and with that, it's going to need to be done by referendum. You can't create a locally elected official or take one away without a referendum of the people. So you have to be passed by the county legislature and then approved by the people to do so. You're getting into more of a structure that's similar to state government here when you get a county executive county. You know, it's and that's why you see this in larger counties, at least originally, right? The Suffolk, the Nassaus, the Westchesters were the first ones to have Monroe county executive counties. You're talking about almost mini states. Some of those counties as is, just population wise. And the county executive does have a lot of similar powers to, and like a governor of a state. So it's an executive branch of elected government official who, and not only, so there's two things that are going on. This is why a charter is necessary for this. You've got a newly created elected official, but then also typically, and you work this out through the charter, you're going to have powers and duties now of this county executive. And these power duties are going to come from, in large part, the county legislature and the board. And there's going to be a give and take on what the residents and what even the board is comfortable with delegating with that creation of the county executive. It's you know, there's definitely, especially for these bigger counties, there's pros. You can have a face of the government. The people know, you know, there's accountability, right? They know this is the person that we can look to and ask these kind of questions. I think definitely in middle and smaller counties, you've got that in your chair, though, right? I think people in the local community know and have access to that chair, and they represent that. But again, with the county executive counties, you've got the elected county executive. They have veto power of legislation. So this is a power that is now taken. The legislature can no longer just unilaterally pass law. They're going to have to pass that law, send that to the county executive. He or she can either sign that into law or veto that action. And then usually it's spelled out in a county charter on how this would work after the legislative body can override that with a supermajority. The county executive, the elected, has similar functions to your county manager. They're going to oversee the internal operation of all departments. They're typically, but this again can be worked out, they can have appointment powers of their department heads. They can also, in large part, have hire and fire decisions on a lot of the county employees. They're your again, that would be more like but they would be elected by the entire county base, and not through whether it be a town or even just a district. They would be elected throughout the entire county. Next slide. We talked a lot about this already, but this is the county admin. This doesn't need to be done by charter. It can be done by local law, and but also you can do this by charter as well. And the administrator or manager, they answer to the legislative body, and they're also created by and delegate a lot of the powers that you'll see a board of supervisors or legislature have. Next slide, please. Did we miss one? I'm sorry. I don't know if we.
I hope not.
Oh, no, we can go to the next one. We covered that. Okay, so county charters. This is probably the way to change the county structure the most. If one sees, what we would like to move to a legislature, and or we want a county executive in our county, and or we're looking to add or get rid of other elected officials, right? I mean, there's counties that have elected comptrollers. Ulster has created with their charter, and through a referendum, a comptroller, right, within their county. The reason why a lot of times you're going to do a county charter for larger changes is it becomes, there's so much change you're looking at, that the overall structure, that you want it to have it all it becomes your county's constitution. And you're writing down how everything's going to work, and you really need to. It's a fine balance between when you're doing a charter and changing, painting oneself in a corner of boy, we didn't think of that, and we actually got too detailed, and we have no flexibility here to. If you leave things too open to interpretation when you're creating these offices, it can cause problems down the road. So let's say you're going to do a county legislature, and on top of that, there's going to be a formation of a county executive. It's going to be spelled out there what their powers and duties are, how long their terms are going to last. Who gets to what happens if the office gets vacated? Who gets to appoint what? And then even finer points of ultimately, a question comes up of when you start forming these other layers of government to help in some ways with the organization, it opens up more questions. And so meaning like who is the county at that point, right? So certainly, who speaks for the county like a board or just a legislature form of government. It can be a little bit more simple to answer that question. The county chair is the head, and they can answer for the county. When you get into a county executive, who's the county attorney answering to, and who are they taking direction from? Those are things that would need to be worked out in your county charter, because it's going to cause a conflict if not. And oftentimes, to get around that, counties would spell out that ultimately the county attorney is going to take the county executive in their direction, and the county legislature will get their own attorney. And again, this adds to costs, but it can get rid of conflicts that can be created. I think I was talking to Barbara, earlier with one example I can think of that can come up. That's relatively simple. That sounds, these structures sound good, but they can lead to everyday problems if they're not spelled out. If a county gets in a lawsuit, for example, and they lose the lawsuit, but they think they've got grounds to appeal. And if the county executive would like to settle this and make the payment right now, but the legislature thinks that would be wasteful for taxpayer money, that we think we can continue this lawsuit, and win on appeal, who makes that call, right? And it really comes down to, you need to think about these things when forming and making these changes, and try to delegate that then and there, because these things will come up. And so who is the county with that? And that's not always an easy thing to figure out, especially when you start adding more layers onto this organizational structure. Next slide. So adopting a charter, and I won't step on too much of the next speakers. I think they're going to go into this, but I can help tag onto this if need be. If you go back one slide, please.
Yeah, what happened?
No, it's no problem. So adopting a charter can happen two different ways. Two different main ways. One, the legislative body can just bring this up and vote with a resolution to, we would like to go forward with a charter. We would like a charter. We're going to set up a charter committee to help draft that and investigate, go through a process of, Montgomery County went through this a few years ago, of let's look at all these, when we create one structure, what are the dominoes that are going to happen? Who do we need to have in place? And which type of structure do we want in place? How many legislators do we even want? Let's say you go to a legislative format. I mean, it's not easy to even figure that out. Do we want 10? Do we want 30? It's going to depend. It's going to depend on your county. How much power do we want to keep with the legislature? How much power do we want to give to a county executive, even if we get a county executive? These are all things that the charter commission that would be set up by the legislative body could work on and draft. The legislative body itself could take this on with help of the county attorney of drafting this charter. And this is all assuming the legislative body makes the determination we'd like to go this route. The other way it can be done is brought forward by a petition of voters. So if I believe it's 10% of the voters from the last governor's race signed a petition that they would like the legislature to look at adopting this, they'd bring that forward to them. And then at that point, they've got that decision to, are we going to do this ourselves, go forward, or is this going to be done by a separate entity to put forward to the people? And again, the charter usually is used as a charter commission, and this can be used with members of the community that have different backgrounds and ideas and that to help out. There's no set number though that have to be on your charter commission. Usually lawyers do get involved because there's a lot of legal traps of what you can and can't do with revising a charter, and what kind of even deadlines of when you need to bring these to the people. But it can be any number of experts that come in to help with a charter commission. And you want to try as best you can to get it right the first time when you adopt a charter. It's a complex legal tools, though, so there's going to be mistakes made, and you're not going to think of everything. But usually, on the most part, if you're going to once you adopt it, if you're going to repeal it or amend it, that's going to be subject to referendum as well. It takes on, like I said before, it's like the state constitution. It becomes your county constitution. So that's going to be your governing law is this charter. If you're going to want to make changes to that, quite often that's going to be subject to referendum as well. You really sort of lock yourself in on many of the structural issues once you form that. And this, I believe, you can only make this kind of change, the major change, once every 10 years, I believe. So again, you want to put some thought and effort into it on that front-loaded end. Next slide. I've got the different, and this is for your reference. I've got just the different laws that impact and where you can go to find these. So if you go down one slide on county organizational structure. So county law is this is will show exactly all the powers that the Board of Supervisors have. This is, we talk about, your local law resolution, how a chair is elected. But they don't even, there's no provision for an elected executive here. This is your basic structure of how county government operates. You'll find in New York State county law. Your next slide. Municipal home rule law. This also has some powers and duties on how our employees operate, but this is also where you can find how to adopt a county charter law, a county charter. You'll actually hear county charter law. That's a provision within the municipal home rule law that'll give you everything you need to know on how to create a county charter and the powers and duties set within that. Next. And that's, again, county charter law, but then again, keep in mind that that's part of municipal home rule. And any questions at all? I know I kind of covered a lot sort of quickly, but if you have any specific questions about counties and how they do it, why they do it.
Patrick, I'd like to hold off this.
Oh, sure.
I want two other speakers to speak, and then we'll open it for questions if that's okay. So
Yeah.
Ann Brandon, I'd like to call on you now. Ann is a representative of the League of Women Voters of Albany County and has had a long history with charters. So Ann, are you here? Ann,
She might be muted. Tell her to unmute herself.
can you unmute yourself, Ann?
How do I do that?
I did.
I did it.
You're okay, you're on. Go,
Okay.
Ann.
You
We're
hear
good.
me okay?
Yes.
Good. Thank you for inviting me. I'm a longtime league member, as she said. And my experience with the Albany County League in county government was 50 years ago, but it was a fascinating project. We went to the monthly meetings of the legislature. And when we tried to give some opinions on improvements, the county attorney said, "You ladies should go back to the kitchen where you belong." Well, one member walked out in a huff and we just sat there stunned. Of course, that only made us work harder. I don't think anything like that would happen today because, in fact, there are now 9 women in our county legislature. We have 39 members, so that's not exactly a half, but we're getting there. In the 60s, the Albany County government had 39 legislators and no executive. They had already converted the county government from supervisors to legislators, but had no executive head. Decisions were made by this county attorney who didn't want the women there, but there was no head. The government was run by state law, as Mr. Cummings said. We had moved to Albany in 1967 from Utica in Oneida County, which was being well run by a forward-looking county executive. Our Albany County League began looking into a more efficient county government, and my Utica experience had inspired me to work on this. We studied how the other county governments in the state were run, especially those that were close to our size. After studying the effectiveness of an elected executive versus an appointed county manager for Albany, we decided to work for an elected executive who would be answerable to the tax-paying citizens of the county under our own Albany County Charter. This is a big selling point to people, giving them the opportunity to have a say in who will be chosen for county executive. This would be a challenge in Albany because we had a very entrenched Democratic Party, which I'm sure you knew about, with the city being run by Mayor Erastus Corning. And at the time, the neighboring suburbs were mostly Republican. So our goal was to get a charter written for Albany County that would give us an elected executive answerable to the citizens. And as Mr. Cummings said, we needed an Albany County Charter Commission appointed by the county legislature to write a charter for the voters to approve at election time. And the legislature had no interest in change, so we had to stir up the public interest to put pressure on the legislators for this. When the legislators appointed their charter commission, I think it was about 9 people, and they had one woman on it, and she was a woman that none of us in the league had ever heard of. So that's how much they wanted the league's input. One of the first things we did was to sponsor an all-day conference with the State University at Albany with speakers knowledgeable in different forms of county government, as you're doing today. This was helpful in bringing interest to the issue, and we continued to hold public meetings with various speakers. With the state capitol in Albany, there were many people to draw from. Then we organized a coalition with other organizations that were willing to work with us called Citizens for County Executives. They included the Rotary, NAACP, AAUW, Junior League, churches, and other groups that were interested. With their help, we sponsored a petition drive to get the legislature to appoint the Charter Commission, emphasizing the need for an elected executive who would be accountable to the citizens. This was a huge effort, but with all of our organizations and publicity from the newspapers and the TV, we collected over 16,000 signatures. This made the legislators decide that they should indeed appoint a commission. So the petition drive was a great way to keep the issue in the public eye, and we kept the media informed continually. We also worked hard to stay nonpartisan so that critics couldn't accuse us of doing the bidding of either party. And we had some legislators and other people who were very well versed on this issue from both parties who wanted this change, and they helped to promote it. The commission wrote a charter with an elected executive, but one with powers as weak as possible, with the legislature still appointing department heads and other things like that. It was put on the ballot in 1973, and we supported it as a step in the right direction. It did pass, and with our first executive elected in 1975, this change was a major improvement in how the county was run. But we continued to work for a stronger executive position where the executive could appoint his or her department heads with legislative approval. And this was passed in later years, because the later executives that we had realized that they really needed more powers than they had to do a good job. There was another try in 2014 for further improvement when another commission was appointed to look at the county government. They did a thorough job of interviewing all the department heads and making various suggestions for change, including how the redistricting should be carried out, because the county had already been sued a few times for the way they did the redistricting. 2 areas we had not been successful in changing were reducing the size of the 39-member legislature, which is the largest one in the state, and having the physician appointed as a medical examiner to replace our 4 part-time coroners. Unfortunately, these changes met with resistance in the legislature, and they were not adopted. Reducing the size was met with resistance from members of the minority community who felt that they would lose influence with us. And the coroners worked hard to show how a medical examiner would be much more expensive. But in spite of these issues, I'd say the legislature works much better today than they did before we had the county executive in our own charter. And I think also that the public in general is much more aware of what's going on with the legislature than had been in the past. For Saratoga County, I would think you need to start with a change to separate the town supervisor position and have separate legislators to get rid of the weighted voting. 1 person, 1 vote should be an easy vote, easy sell to people. With redistricting coming up, this would be a good time to work on that. And petition drives are a great way to get people involved. Of course, the media is a very different animal than it was in the 1970s. But it also gives us major ways to spread the news of our activities through the social media. I know your Saratoga League has good publicity because I often read about it in the Times-Union, what the things that you're doing. So good luck on whatever you decide to pursue. Sometimes making a change in government structure seems impossible, but other times you find that people are really ready for that change. And we have good county executive now, a good county executive, Dan McCoy, and the department head of the health department, Dr. Elizabeth Whalen. You've probably seen them on the TV. I think they've done a good job of keeping everybody informed and moving ahead on this whole pandemic that we've had this year. So thanks for
Thank you, Ann. That was really, really interesting to go back 50 years and still be working on the same issue. I'd like now to turn to Ori Hacker. Ori comes to us today from Montgomery County, and she served on the county commission in 2012. Was it 2012, Ori?
I think so.
Okay, welcome, Ori. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. I wanted to start with how I ended up on the commission. I opened my local newspaper one day and there was an article about how the legislature, our board of supervisors, which is what we had at the time, was talking about creating a charter commission, and they were asking for volunteers from the community. So to start with, it was our board of supervisors that raised the issue. It was not done by petition. And I should say it had been, from what I heard at the time, it had been at least 15 years that they had been trying to do this, and finally they got the votes. Anyway, so there was this article in the paper. I saw it and I said, hey, maybe I could do that, because it was in the evening. I could do it when I was working. And I called the number, and I ended up on the commission. It turns out there wasn't a whole lot of interest. So that's how I ended up on it. The commission was 10 people, one person dropped out, so it ended up with 9 of us. There was the head of the community college, somebody from the board of the directors of the hospital, a young man who was the son of a town supervisor, and he was a recent law graduate. I was an attorney at the time, and but had no experience in this field at all, and other local people. And I was the only woman, I should tell you, this is 50 years later, and they were all pretty agog at that. But I managed. We had several meetings. We started out with we used the charter for Putnam County, I believe it was, as a template. And one of the people was in contact with the New York State Association of Counties and got some help from them. And we worked from there. We knew we wanted to get rid of the weighted system, the 2-hat system. We debated the idea of the county executive and decided that's what we really needed. At the time, the board of supervisors was very dysfunctional. There was arguing. There was one of the things that I heard about that was caused this need was that the county departments never knew who was in charge. There would be somebody on a committee who was supervising an area, say, social services, who would go to the head of social services and say, this is my idea, do this. And then somebody else on that committee would go and say, oh no, this is my idea, let's do that. They even got involved in personnel decisions that were really not appropriate for them to do, but they felt they could because they were on a committee that oversaw that area. So the department heads just did not know who was in charge, what was going on, because there were so many different people involved in it. Anyway, back to the process. We had several meetings. We came up with a draft. I know that in our process, we did work on drawing boundaries for the new legislative districts. We decided that this would be just a proposal to give the public an idea of what this would look like. In the end, the tentative boundaries we drew were accepted. One thing Anne mentioned was that they had been careful to be nonpartisan. That's very important. None of us ever talked about politics in our meetings. I know there were people on both sides of the aisle. 2012 was less partisan than it is now, if you imagine, but we kept it strictly nonpartisan. We did not talk Republican or Democrat or anything. The only time that came up was when we were talking about how we would redraw the boundaries after a census. And we came up with the idea of a committee that would be, we would give the Republican legislators a certain number of candidates and the Democratic legislators another number of candidates, and then the executive, I believe, would have one, so that the committee that would redraw the boundaries was not going to be the legislature, but it would be a committee composed of Republicans and Democrats. But that's the only time that came up. Otherwise, we did not discuss that. So Anne's point on that was important. You have to keep this nonpartisan because it's really not a partisan issue. It's a good government issue. We went to the ballot. The legislature eventually approved this and it got on the ballot that November. And we were very, very happy that it passed. We have an elected county executive who is elected obviously countywide. The supervisors retained their positions just as supervisors. I think Francine had asked me, what did the supervisors think at the time? And the only thing I remember them saying was, well, what offices will we have? Because they were used to having an office in Fonda, which is our county seat. And that was their big, concern. We managed to save a little money by lowering their salaries because they weren't doing two jobs. So the supervisor salaries went down. The new legislators, I think, I can't remember exactly how it works, but maybe they just took on the half that the supervisors had been given to sit on the board of supervisors as well as town supervisor duties. But yes, it did come to more money because we had to pay a county executive, but it's been worth it. I will tell you that recently I spoke to some people, some community members from the village of Canajoharie. Now, we had a situation here where the beech nut plant, which had been there for generations, several years ago moved out of their facility. They outgrew it and they moved to a facility in the town of Florida. So it's good for the county. We got to keep beech nut, but the factory in the village rather of Canajoharie was empty. And there were issues with asbestos mitigation and then marketing it to new, whoever was going to come in. And these people were saying that they were so thrilled that the county executive was in place because he is having one person to deal with all of this was so much better than having a board of supervisors, with no one person in charge. That the prospects of moving forward this project for reimagining the old beech nut factory is way ahead of where it would have been had we still been under the old county Board of Supervisors. And I should point out, we're a very small county. We have 49,000 people. But even in a small county like ours, with a much smaller budget, you can have big projects that impact the entire county. And for us, it has turned out that having a county supervisor, an elected county executive, has really been for the better. I should also point out that after our charter passed and the new legislature met for the first time, they did find there were a few little problems. And I don't know, Patrick, if you were involved in that, but they were very worried that they would have to go back to the voters to fix whatever mistakes we made. And it turned out they were so minor that they could just fix it legislatively. So we were all very happy about that. So it wasn't perfect, but the new legislature managed to do some tweaks without the whole thing having to go back to the voters. So that's it. That was my experience, and it was a good one. It was, I think, better for the county as a whole. And any questions? And
Okay, thank you very much, Lori.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for sharing with us.
Sure.
I'd like to open it up to questions now. And we have one in chat from Anthony Liflish to everyone, if I can find it. Chat. Can a town supervisor, town board member, town clerk, town highway superintendent, school board member, library trustee, or fire district trustee serve on a county legislative seat and still keep their current job under municipal home rule law?
Yeah, I'll try to field that one. I
Thank you.
mean, there's a lot, there's many there, right? So there's the attorney general's office and the comptroller have a lot of opinions throughout the year and I think the attorney general's office is got an opinion page, a state that you can look at a lot of, they give out their opinions on the law on conflicting positions. And so these kind of questions come up a lot of, you know, I'm an assistant county attorney, but I'd like to run for town board or run for city mayor. Am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to wear those two hats? And I suggest for any of these specific ones, you go to that as your first resource to look. I mean, they've got these questions come up a lot. So the AG's weighed in a lot over the years and they can get to, so I don't know about specific like school board members, but it would take a little looking up. I think they can, well, I don't know. There's a long list there that you can find and hopefully you can hit exactly that one. But on the most part, the wearing the two hat rule is really, the main rule with any of these conflicts is you can't be your own boss. So that's when you know you've got a conflict right off the bat. If you're trying to get an elected position and you've got a current position, you can't provide yourself your own oversight. So if you work in the county, if you have a county position already, and then you would become on the part of the legislature as the oversight, that's typically, I mean, there's I never like to say never as an attorney, but it's typically a no-no. And usually, outside of many of your, the town, then also representing the county, and there's reasons for that in the law. We get into why they allow that two hat to happen, and part with the shared service link. That's usually also typically frowned upon. So if you're elected from one position, you're typically not allowed to be elected in another for public purposes, not for elected boards or something.
Okay, so that's something that you wouldn't necessarily put in a charter because there's already state guidance on that. So that's not something that a charter committee would say, oh, well, we're going to put this detail in our charter. Not necessary.
And Ori, Yeah. I mean, yeah, typically not, right? Like, I mean, it's when we get back to what we talked about earlier of you want to put in enough details to avoid conflict, but you don't want to put in so much that you paint yourself in a corner. You certainly don't want to conflict with laws, state laws that you're not allowed to conflict with. But yeah, I also remember that Dory, your point, and thanks for coming and speaking. With Montgomery County, if I recall, we did definitely at least have some calls with them and try to help them with some guidance to this it wasn't a situation where it impacted an elected power or duty, and so therefore it didn't have to go back out to referendum, I think. But I think the problem came from, and this is there's a lot to these charters, starting with the Putnam County one, which was a great template, and it worked. And so it was a great starting point, if memory serves, on how we did this process. But then there were specific things in that charter based just on Putnam County that I think didn't translate to. I think it was either like they named a village, or it was they had some kind of government structure that didn't even occur in Montgomery, so it had to get cleaned up. We could clean it up just unilaterally. It didn't have to go to the people.
Okay.
Okay, I have another question here. One of our biggest problems is there are different needs in small towns and big towns. How would districts be drawn to still give small towns a say and reflect the needs of larger towns too? Well, that's a $100 million question, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is what would be debated with the recommendations of how to go forward. And one of the biggest problems to overcome is how do we draw those lines, and you stay within one person, one vote, and make sure that everyone's being represented properly. I mean, you can again do that multiple ways. You can just draw it exactly based, and you could do actual boxes based on population. And if you want to make sure that small enough areas are being represented, you can make as many little boxes as you want, right, to start. But the problem then gets again into cost and do we have too many voices now? And so it's finding that size of how you create those to make sure. But ultimately, if you did change, it wouldn't necessarily be a town line anymore. I mean, I guess you could draw it that way and then just have a again weighted voting system, but it would. You would run into those issues of how do we get make sure that small towns are represented and big towns have enough voice, and the district lines always will be an issue on how do we cut that up to make sure we're representing the people properly. It's a tough question, and one that that's when a lot of counties that are in board supervisor towns say, you know what, we're good with the system we have. We like the way it's represented right now, and we're not going to change. But it's why it gets discussed.
Okay, well, in Montgomery County, we have one large city, Amsterdam, well, large by our lights, and the rest of the county is rural. It's a few small villages and rural areas. When you get right down to it, there's really no difference between a weighted system and equal districts. But they look really different. And there's people's perceptions, and that I think is very important. What we ended up doing was we made districts that have the same number of people. And of course, as it happened, the city of Amsterdam ended up with more legislators than anywhere else. So of course, you can have the legislators from numerous more rural districts say, well, this is what all of the rural areas need, and they can create a voting block to outvote the city when it's in their interest to do so. And that, of course, can happen with the weighted votes. Again, in the end, there's no technical difference between a weighted vote and equal districts, but it's how people look at it. And when they say, okay, you know, the legislator I voted for gets one vote, and the legislator somebody in the city voted for gets one vote, people just feel it's more fair. And that's important. I think it's important for people to get more invested in what's happening. So again, you can say there's going to be shifts in interests and power any way you do this. But I do feel that people feel it looks more fair when there's each legislator gets one vote. So there you are.
Do we have any other questions? Anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, please feel free. I can't see everybody, so
I have a question.
just say who you are and go for it.
Thank you. Anthony LaFleche, thank you for everyone for hosting this presentation. It's been wonderful. My question is this. In the Saratoga County Board of Supervisors, at the committee level where most legislation is decided, like public works, public safety, and so forth, each town supervisor has literally one vote regardless of the size of the population they're representing. For example, Day with roughly 1,000 people has the same vote, one in a committee level, than Halfmoon with 21,000 people roughly.
Correct.
Does that violate the one person, one vote constitutional requirements?
Mhm. Patrick, you want to try that one?
Yeah, no, it's common, right? And you see that in the state legislature, you see that in county, you see that in federal representation. It doesn't on that level. You typically set your rules internally for committees and structure, and even different organization, government organizational structures will have a different process of even how things get in committee and get out of committee. But certainly, how many people are part of, let's say you've got an ag committee or something, and who get it's typically the majority that is going to appoint who's on what committee chair. But the one person, one vote is when it gets to the floor for an overall vote on whether it be a resolution or local law. The weighted voting doesn't necessarily have to happen on the committee level typically. And again, you see that with the state and federal system as well.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a quick question. I have been reluctant to go ahead with this because of COVID. And I just wonder what people think about that, because we can't have group meetings very easily to try and sell a program or a change.
Yes, you can see by our difficulty today that it's hard to do. Anybody want to comment?
That's a
I
point.
think it's, go ahead, Ori.
Well, I was just going to say, we did have public meetings during the process to inform the public and get feedback before we came up with our proposal. And yeah, that's something I didn't think of either. But yeah, we did have those public meetings.
I'll say this on not even related to this subject, but I've in my time with I worked at Schenectady County before this, and my time with NISAC, I've actually never seen there's some silver linings. This tragedy that we've all gone through together with COVID. One of the silver linings was I've never seen so much attention and input and people coming to these county hearings, understanding of county government and its importance. And one of the reasons is as much as I was complaining about Zoom to start this, I mean, it is we need to get better internet access for everybody to make sure that they're able to participate and join. But it's under the current structure, there's a click of a button and you can get to your county legislature and talk to them about issues that are of concern. And there's always, but this process and all process starts with communicating with directly with your town and county representative in Saratoga, and they're this is I'll give the pro town supervisor part of this. I think if you're in your town, you know who your supervisor is. They're accessible. They're local and they're close to you. It's not like at the state level. It's difficult to get to find even who your senator is, and then trying to get in touch with them, or certainly in the governor's office. But at the town level, you're going to probably run into them at the supermarket, right? But there's the access is there, and the access is there for the hearing processes as well, or any kind of public meeting. We can get to them with a click of a button. Right now, when more and more people are, the numbers were quite up across the state on these meetings, in large part because of the importance of what we were dealing with, but also I think people are just getting used to it, and it's a positive. And I think that trend's going to continue even when we get out of COVID.
Yes, I think you're right. Definitely, we've seen that. We have a few more minutes. Any other questions?
I have one.
Go for it, whoever you are.
Okay, it's Darnell Rohrabaugh. Right now in our county, Saratoga County, the supervisors, most of them do wear two hats, and they are in charge of their town and everything goes on in the town, and also in charge of what goes on in the county. I personally think they would be relieved to only have the pressure of one thing, that is only take care of their town, not have to take care of the county too. But I think they're also afraid that they're going to give up some power with that. Have anybody, like in Albany or Montgomery County or anything, had experience with supervisors after the change is made, and whether they in fact were happy with only taking care of their town or only taking care of their county and not having to do both? Or did they feel that part of their power was taken away? Does anybody have any experience with that?
And when Albany started, you had already had a legislature, right?
We did, yes. And so that particular thing wasn't a big issue, but we've talked a lot about trying to get a smaller legislature. And I think the legislators are very reluctant to do that because they don't want to lose that job. Legislatures, and also this is true with the coroners, they have a really good deal. Even though they don't make a lot of money, they have a pension from the state forever. And so, they really like to have those jobs. So,
Ori, I think you mentioned the interest in not losing an office.
Yeah,
Was there anything else?
I think most of the legislators, supervisors, sorry, we're not crazy about the idea. I don't know how it's turned out since. I really don't. I can't say that we have a different supervisor now in my town, so this person who's here now wasn't even around then. That I can't answer, what the fallout was afterwards.
Yeah, like everything. I mean, there's pros and cons, and you have to look at everyone's situation and weigh that and what works best for your county. And that, again, that's why we have such different forms of government. And just off the top of my head, I can think of, so that office example is a great example. That's when you're a board of supervisors in the county of Montgomery at that time, they were, that's a shared service, whether they wanted to call that or not. They were using the county office and the overhead that comes with that. And that wasn't, it's not necessarily a bad thing. That's now they don't, the taxpayer doesn't have to pay for a town office too. They get just that office space alone, right? But now, so you're creating another layer now could that other layer then focus just on county work that can then help or the county executive come in and they're going to find efficiencies, right? But that's also why you've got your county administrator to do that, right? You bring in a position to help organize and then find efficiencies, but there will be startup costs. There will be sometimes some headbutting where I wouldn't be surprised to find, always between towns and counties, the how much sales tax sharing, or should there even be sales tax sharing occurs. And that's going to be, that's a little bit easier conversation when the two are working together, right? When they're two separate forms of government. Each are going to have good arguments on why they need those resources, these limited resources for their residents. But ultimately, if I'm just the resident, they're the same resident. They want them to figure out and get along, right? But so it's these kind of things that I think the answer would be like a lot of things. It depends.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yes, I just have one. If you're going to create the office of county executive, this is Anthony LaFleche, I'm sorry. If you're going to create the office of county executive, does a county have to have an established county charter to do this? Or can it do it on its own through municipal law or county law?
Great question.
I'm pretty sure it has to be a charter. Am I right, Patrick?
Yeah, I think so. I'm always hesitant to say everything, as you can see, probably from my personality. I never like to say everything is 100% true. It is. Let's put it this way. It's true that every county executive has a county charter. Could one create it? I'll say this with certainty. It would have to be done by referendum one way or another. I think it would have to be done through a county charter, but it would certainly have to be, and I think it'd have to be, because thereuld be a multiple step process why I think it'd have to be a county charter the more and more I think about it. You're creating an elected position.
Yeah, I think it's going to.
So therefore it's got to be referendum, but then you're also taking away powers and duties currently of other elected officials. So I mean, it's a multiple step process, and I think at a minimum the cleanest way would be through a county charter. But I'll have to get back to you to say if there is a mechanism you can do it without it.
Thank you.
This is Barb Thomas. And I'd just like to say for everybody in Saratoga County who's thinking about this, that currently all of the towns have their own office buildings, and each of the towns pays their town supervisor for town services. And then all of the supervisors get the same pay from the county. So those particular problems are probably not problems that we would need to face.
Correct. Okay, any more questions? Well, I would like to very, very much thank our three participants for explaining how complicated and time-consuming this proposal or this process might be. And we are very grateful that you spent some of your Saturday afternoon with us. I'm glad that the sun wasn't shining and nobody wanted to go out to do yard work, so that we had a good number of participants. And I hope we've been able to pique some interest. I'm not sure where this process goes from here, but if anybody has suggestions, please feel free to send them. What's the email for us, Barb? President
at lwvsaratoga.org.
And we'll be happy to take comments, and our committee will think of what we might do next. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but the comments would help give us some direction. Anybody else like to speak before we?
Yeah,
Sheila.
Is this going to be recorded? Was it recorded? So
It
that-
is recorded. even
We
though-
hope it's recorded.
Okay, good. That's. very
Actually,
helpful.
it is recorded.
Okay. We hope we don't lose it.
Look at part of it. And I want to say thank you to all three people because it was very helpful.
You're welcome.
I was on that 21 commission that people were talking about for Saratoga County. So it's been a long time.
Yes, a lot of these things seem to take a long time. Anybody else? Well, hearing nothing,
Thank you.
somebody,
Bye-bye. Keep
Thank
well,
you for
everybody.
having me.
we
Yeah.
will adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So, oh, did Francine leave already?
Afraid so, Barb.
Okay, I actually have to stop the recording.